Hey, they're joined by our Vic Carucci for a post-Thanksgiving edition of Take Two as we look ahead to the Bills and Eagles matchup this Sunday in Philadelphia. Vic, thank you for joining us. I hope that post-Thanksgiving nap was pretty good after that turkey.
Yes, very, very nice. And I certainly wish the same to you and everyone tuning into this.
Yeah, for sure. You were talking to me about how good that pumpkin pie is on a good Thanksgiving day. I'm certainly a pumpkin pie enthusiast as well. The Bills are hoping they get kind of their version of pumpkin pie with a win this Sunday in Philly. And I know they're coming off a win against the Jets that felt different for this team, right? You know, Joe Brady, first game at offensive coordinator, there's all this talk about energy and juice and confidence. And they certainly played that way. 32-6 win over the Jets. Impossible to not feel good about that win. But this Eagles team is different than the Jets, right, Vic?
Beating the Jets, as bad as they are, to me, doesn't make that much of a statement, but it did for the Bills serve to stop the bleeding, so to speak, and stop the losing streak and really give them something positive to look at after 6 weeks of not so good play. In terms of the Eagles, it's a whole different story. If they beat that team, best record in the NFL, now you're making a loud statement that if you're not all the way back, you're at least closer to the serious contender that a lot of us thought they were entering the season. So this is a win, and doing it on the road that could really, I think, do wonders, not only for the confidence of the Bills, but also just in terms of the respect that they would have throughout the NFL.
You're right. They're certainly going to be looked at differently because they have the bye week coming up after this Eagles game. You look at them a lot differently if they're 7-5 coming off 2 straight wins, one of them being against the Eagles, as opposed to if they drop this game, they're 6-6 sitting at 500 through 12 games. Certainly a big difference in perception right there.
Absolutely. The Bills can change perception, and it has at its worst been a case where they've been described as a train wreck. And at its best, they're sort of less relevant than I think they would think themselves to be, and with all the star power that they have. So in having that week, if they can come off with a win on the road against a top team, having that week to savor that, I think can build momentum, can actually give them a big boost entering a crucial final stretch of the season.
Joe Brady already 1 game down as the offensive coordinator, and we saw the results. It was the Bills' best offensive performance really since they beat Miami all the way back in week 4. We saw some movement of the pocket with Josh. We saw the run game get established. Just how much of that can be translated to an Eagles defense that is just as good as the Jets defense?
I think the Bills did many things against the Jets defense that are notable, and Joe Brady deserves a lot of credit for that. The entire offensive staff for mainly doing things that helped Josh Allen restore his confidence and wasn't being asked to carry so much of the load by himself. So there were elements of the game plan and the play selection that told me that this team wants its quarterback to feel like he's got other people he can lean on. It's going to be a different story, I think, against the Eagles, because one area that I don't see the Bills able to lean on as much would be their run game. Eagles are really good in that area. Now, teams have had success throwing on them, and I think Josh Allen's going to have success finding some big plays through the air. But the question is, are the Eagles going to limit the Bills' ability to be multi-dimensional, and that will be the key to this game. If the Bills are getting nowhere on the run and it's all about Josh throwing the football, that will change a lot of things in terms of how the Eagles rush him and play coverages and so forth that could make for a frustrating day.
With that being said, does that then make it more important that Josh maybe uses his legs? We saw him. We've seen a little bit more of Josh running with the football here these past couple of weeks. After a couple of weeks where he would just kind of stay in the pocket and wouldn't take off. He's been running a little bit more. Is that added element coming back into his game going to be even more important against an Eagles defense that might be pretty stout against James Cook and Latavius Murray and Ty Johnson?
I think you're going to see a lot of Josh Allen running in this game because this Eagles defense is big and powerful up front. And big and powerful doesn't tend to lend itself to a lot of speed, though they have some people who are athletes who can absolutely pursue and challenge in that regard. But Josh Allen is such an exceptional runner, as is Jalen Hurts, his counterpart, that trying to track him down when he's running with the football is a tough thing to do, even for a great defense. What it can do in the way that Joe Brady utilized it against the Jets is help open up other things. Keep that threat there. Make plays look like the types of plays where Josh can bail out and run, or certainly fake the run and then throw it, throw to the middle, throw to work Dalton Kincaid on those tight end routes and so forth. Try to utilize as much camouflage of the types of plays you run so that the defense is guessing.
What stood out to you most about the way Brady called the game against the Jets, and just what he did in that game, and what maybe you would like to see from that against the Eagles?
I think the beauty of what Joe Brady did was he kept it simple. He kept it very basic and didn't force anything. I mean, Stephon Diggs has not been a huge factor for like the last couple of games, but especially in that Jet game, where you would think the matchup with Sauce Gardner, for his own personal sense and ego of a receiver who knows he's as good as it gets and wants to show his talents that way, and would presumably be looking for that football. But Stephon Diggs looked all bought in on an offense that was spreading the ball around and that wasn't taking unnecessary chances. So for Joe Brady's sake, in terms of how he calls this game against the Eagles, he's got to stick to that. Yes, look for those opportunities, of course, to go to your biggest playmaker in Stephon Diggs. Look for opportunities to go to Gabe Davis. But if things are not there, look at what Dalton Kincaid has been doing in that tight end role. And I think as a tight end, he is running more effective routes, making more effective plays than he really did as that bigger slot receiver that he was, filling fully the role of Dawson Knox. You see a more dynamic threat, frankly, at tight end. And the Bills can see that, and I think are designing their offense accordingly. So I expect to see a lot of him to help loosen things up in that Eagle defense.
We'll talk about pass weapons. The Eagles certainly have a couple of them in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Jalen Hurts throwing them the ball. He's certainly an MVP candidate. And it's a team that can also run the ball with the best of them as well. A lot of balance on this team. Just how much of a challenge does that balance pose to this Bills defense?
It's a huge challenge because I can see this Eagle team looking at the smallish Bills defense and the fact that it can stay even smaller when Sean McDermott likes to stick with that nickel coverage and keep those smaller bodies in there to cover the pass. It's understandable that you want to defend the pass, but when you have a team that can muscle up and just overpower you and keep the ball pounding all the way down the field like the Eagles can, that can take a lot out of the defense. I would suspect early on, again, depending on how things go with the score, but if the Eagles see themselves in the early going of the game dictating what they are, which is first and foremost a power offense, that could be a problem for Buffalo, because I don't think they'll match up really well with the power that O-line can bring to the game. And then especially when you get in those short yardage situations, those are virtual guarantee plays, that tush push brotherly shove thing that the Eagles do. And that's demoralizing when you can't stop a team on 4th and 1. So is there really even a bad spot on the field for the Eagles to go for it on 4th down? Most teams can't do what they do. They present a very unique challenge that way. And I think the other factor here is the crowd, is the fact that this game is in Philadelphia, obviously, allowing when the Eagles offense is on the field to do its thing. But when you flip it around and the Bills offense is on the field and say they have to get into a matching points game where you're being more, I think, aggressive with how you do things and your formations and your movement, And that requires a lot of communication. And you know that this Eagle crowd at Lincoln Financial Field, man, they are going to be as stoked as you would expect for the defending NFC champions and really bring it.
I want to take a deeper look at that Eagles pass game, though, because Sean McDermott made an interesting comment this week where he said A.J. Brown, that acquisition is as good as any team has made in recent NFL history. Those were Sean McDermott's words. And so A.J. Brown's been having a phenomenal season. But in that Chiefs game, you saw Devontae Smith. He was really the one kind of making the big plays for the Eagles. He had the big catch down the sideline that put them in range to score the game-winning touchdown. Ideally, if you're the Bills, you would like to have a fully healthy secondary to match up against that, but they're going to be out Taylor Rapp. They're going to be out Dane Jackson. They do have Taron Johnson cleared concussion protocol. So how much is that an issue for the Bills with kind of a banged up secondary facing a pretty dangerous passing attack that Philadelphia possesses?
I think missing Taylor Rapp and Dane Jackson will enhance the difficulty of the Bills' ability to deal with those big time targets that the Eagles have in that passing game. It just will. And there's going to have to be some adjusting because we know Taylor Rapp had been doing a lot of that work at safety and allowing Jordan Poyer to be closer to the line of scrimmage and be part of a more physical attempt on the Bills defense to handle the run. So you would assume that gets eliminated or certainly reduced in this situation. And in terms of the corners, how well can they hold up in single coverage? Is there any locking down? The Bills don't have that really in terms of their current configuration at cornerback. So that's an advantage, I think, to the Eagles. As far as Sean McDermott talking up the talents of A.J. Brown and saying what he said, which I agree with in terms of how much he means to them, and then talking up Howie Roseman, the GM of the Eagles, and doing what he's done on a consistent basis, as Sean put it, to keep that team a Super Bowl contender. Those are bouquets that opposing coaches like to throw at the opponent, and Sean is very familiar with that game. And I'm not saying he's insincere, but I am saying he's doing his very best to, and remember, he got his coaching start with the Eagles. He's doing his very best, I think, to kind of temper some things. And the Eagles don't come into this game as fired up as they might have been, you would think, had they lost to Kansas City in their previous outing. So you don't get that angry Eagles team, but you do get an Eagles team that can look around the rest of the NFC and know they're in for a pretty good dogfight and would want to do everything possible to hang on to that top seed in the NFC postseason.
Let's look at the records, right? 9-1, 6-5. The Eagles should be heavy favorites, but it doesn't feel like everyone feels this way. It feels like kind of people see the Bills, hey, they're in 6-5 team, but they have the talent to kind of match up with anyone. And if on the Bills' best day, they can beat anyone. Is that the kind of sense that you get from this game, that maybe the Eagles are deserved favorites being at home and everything, but the Bills have a fighter's chance to go in Philadelphia and take this win before the bye week?
I think the view is that Josh Allen gives the Bills that ability to be seen as much more of a threat than, say, Kyle Allen or anyone else at quarterback for Buffalo, except Josh. So it starts there. And it also includes the fact that Vegas, when they make these lines, and they're pretty good at what they do, pretty accurate in terms of how they view the differences between the teams. But one of the things that is going to cause movement for the line is how much money is being bet, you would think, on the Eagles. So it would reduce the line, presumably, and help kind of balance things out, because those guys in Vegas tend to come out ahead no matter what people think that they're
right.
going to beat them. But no, and not to get too deep into the weeds on odds makers, because that is not my thing. But I do think it's indicative of a premier quarterback matchup. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, two guys who really do similar things, right? Because they're both dynamic throwers, but they're also runners and throwers on the run. So they can beat you in multiple ways. And the respect easily is there and should be there for what Josh Allen can do. And, oh, yeah, they're coming off that Jets game. Had that Jets game gone differently, would this one be viewed as the game that it is, a close competitive game with two talented teams, or one that says, maybe the Bills are in a tailspin, because the talk would be entirely different this week. We know it would be if they found a way to lose to another mediocre / bad team in the Jets.
This leads me to basically my final question. And we've talked about Josh Allen so much already in this conversation. In terms of X factor, is it really as simple as Josh Allen playing at an MVP level in order to lead the Bills to a win in Philly?
It is. I think the only chance they have to come out with a win is if Allen is playing his top level game. And what does that mean? It doesn't necessarily mean he has to throw for 400 yards. Maybe a low 300-yard passing game will do, but multiple touchdown passes are a must. 0 turnovers are a must. You cannot give a team that has as much talent as the Eagles do any extra opportunities with the ball, or that will beat you. And everything has to be tight. Defensively, they have to find a way to overcome the injuries they have on the back end. They cannot be giving up, those easy slam dunk plays that Jalen Hurts might be able to find if A.J. Brown is consistently getting behind the coverage. And then there's special teams. You can't have any screw ups there. It was a bit of a mixed bag we saw, with some great plays. This was against the Jets, some great plays, and then some not so great. And I think that means you can't miss an extra point. You can't get caught with a fake punt. Those are the kinds of things that we saw that the Jets did that made you scratch your head and say, okay, this was a good outing for special teams that started off in such a big way with Reggie Gilliam's hit and got him AFC Special Teams Player of the Week. But overall, it almost has to be, I think, a perfect game in every phase.
All righty. Well, we'll see what goes down. A 4:25 kickoff on Sunday, the last Bills game before they finally get to that bye week that feels like it's coming so late in the season. Big thank you for joining us, and look forward to catching up with you again to break down this game.
My pleasure, Jonathan.